Oh, yes.
This week on the Squatchers Lounge podcast, David and the Reverend Jeff continue to discuss cryptids from around the world. Tonight we're going to be looking at a lesser-known cryptid. From the rainforests of South America, we give to you the Mapinguari, a bipedal creature, supposedly Bigfoot-like, but with a whole lot more WTF, like a mouth in its belly. No, seriously. So it's with great pleasure that I announce to you the host of this mess, once again, the Reverend Jeff Kelly.
What the hell is going on here tonight? I don't know, but we're going to figure it out. I am indeed your host, the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and with me as always is the doctor, David Batdorf. Pseudo scientist. How you doing, David?
Excellent. This is a cryptid that I always like to look at as not necessarily in the Bigfoot light, but we'll get to that. And so this is a fun one to talk about, and has its own interesting things if you take it to a little more biological look.
Exactly. We're going to be talking about the Mapinguari of the Brazilian rainforest. Around the Amazon, they report a creature of giant proportions, like 12 feet, with one eye and a huge gaping jaws in his belly. But before we get to all that, of course, we're going to do the news. I like the news. The news is fun. The news will amuse you this week, I promise. It's actually kind of funny. First thing up, this came across my my news feed this week was the gorilla cracks the glass enclosure. Dude, this was off the chain. People making, oh, look at the pretty gorilla. Aren't they pretty in the zoo? And so you hit press play on that sucker, and the silverback says, yeah, not so funny.
Not impressed with the chest pounding on the other side. Boom.
Boom. This is why you don't do things like this in the zoo, people. Yeah, I mean, he's not coming through that glass. The zoos are prepared for things like that, but that just cost that zoo like $2,500.
At least. I mean, that's crazy. and I'm sure that everyone on the other side of that glass soiled themselves just a little bit.
As a matter of fact, if you go into facebook.com/groups/SLounge, there's a freeze frame done by, God, I want to say it was Stelios, that caught the expression of the people in the glass. Freeze frame it and took it and dropped it there. So if you go out there, it's actually in the lounge. You can find the picture of the people's reaction as that gorilla smashed the glass in front of them. But wow, oh wow. I mean, I've seen like chimps get mad and like throw beep beeps, those rolling cars at the windows and stuff. But boy, to bust that glass, that's some serious bulletproof glass there, and he smashed it like it was nada.
Just the amount of force that was put on.
If that would have been your head, it would have just popped like a coconut.
Yeah, like a grape.
Grape ape. Anyhow, moving on. Dr. Sarmiento, my man. He's the guy that we all got introduced into in the Monster Quest shows. Well, came across my newsfeed this week. This is where the guy comes from. He's a primatologist. He works with gorillas, and basically he sat around for years and learned the hand traits and the feet traits of the gorillas and the chimps around the world. And this is actually his white paper on it that was put out in 1994. I mean, so the dude's got a lot of credibility in primates. But what I remember about the dude was he first came out and he was anti-Bigfoot. Well, this is why Bigfoot can't exist. Look, I can make dermal ridges on my foot and blow it up just by using some chemicals. There's no reason to believe in Bigfoot. And then all of a sudden he rolled into being on the Skookum cast with Dr. Meldrum being pro Bigfoot. All of a sudden he went through that entire generation from non-discrediting believer to, oh my God, these things could really be out there. I always thought that was an interesting transition. Whether it was a true transition or not is yet to see. What are your thoughts on that, Dave?
My thoughts are that we got to witness this transition on 3 or 4 episodes of Monster Quest, and that's need you say more. Like this is a hired gun primatologist who at the end is like, yeah, this is a real good thing. They're like, dude, we need one more season. Help us out a little bit, please.
Well, as a matter of fact, the more I dug into tonight's topic, the Mapinguari, Sarmiento's name keeps popping up because he was, studying of all the animals, the larger primates, and of course, what's down there besides what's in the Amazon, the big monkey that's down there?
The big monkey? There's not terribly large monkeys down there, but there's,
Well, those are the New World monkeys.
yeah.
The ones we can't seem to find anywhere else. Anyhow, we'll get to that later on.
Yeah.
Moving on, poor Coco and Konsi. What's going to happen, dude? I mean, from what I'm reading in this article, it seems like nobody's really interested in talking to him anymore. What's going on with the primate studies? I mean, we're getting to say that they're sentient and that they're non-human persons. So do these studies really need to go away?
The interest in a lot of these studies were more publicly funded than scholarly, and once you hit a wall, both with publicly funded and if you're working through a university and all that stuff like that, once you hit a wall and you can't go any farther, well, what's the use of funding it? And so you start to have to rely more on the private funding, and
I think their point was proven. I think it comes down to the fact that with more and more of these lawsuits, and we're going to be talking about that here in just a few minutes, with them coming out to be, winning these lawsuits of non-human primate rights, their point's been proven. Okay, we get it. They're really friggin' smart, and they're almost people. We get it. So does it really need to be kept in captivity any longer, or new ones be put into captivity to prove how smart they are? That's like keeping a slave to see how strong he can get.
So and the one thing that they do have in the case of like Konsi and whatnot is you see that they're actually working on sort of an enrichment program at the same time as they're working on this language study. So really like an ape like Konsi is being treated differently because he's not allowed to just do whatever he wants all the time.
Right, he's not a research chimp for a makeup company getting stuck in the butt and having Maybelline rubbed all over.
Yeah, and not living in like a 3x4 enclosure with concrete and steel. Like he's got toys. He's got.
Sorry, I should have said Maybelline. I should have said makeup company.
Yeah.
Let me just back that up right there. I like Maybelline. Maybelline does not test on animals. That was my bad.
Before we start getting angry letters from Maybelline. Exactly. But yeah, so I mean, but what this says is like, what is the once the study's over, or once public interest wanes, what's left? I think that they're in a point where
what's left is science.
Yeah, Dr. Sue is still working. We're not really that interested, but the funding is not really there.
Well,
and Konsi has a son who's got all this great potential to teach us even all that much more, and is growing up in this environment. They're nurturing him in like two, like it's kind of like exposure to the human culture and exposure to the bonobo culture, right? So it still is an interesting thing, but there's some drawbacks to this, and there's some double standards. Well,
I guarantee you, if you give him the choice between the bonobo life or the human life, he's choosing the bonobo life.
Oh, absolutely.
You give the kid, you give the son the choice of which life he wants to live, and he's hanging out with, he's not coming with these humans. He doesn't want anything. We're still forcing that dude to teach us things that he doesn't need to teach us at all.
Exactly. Well, and chimps in sanctuary are still technically in captivity. They're still in enclosures. They're still inside. They have access to exercise and free range.
But they're not living in the Congo.
Yeah, but they are not. Konsi will never be returned to the wild. He does not know how to live in the wild. He does know how to.
He's basically a circus chimp for scientists.
Yeah, and he knows how to use these lexigrams.
They taught him lots of tricks. Yeah, I mean,
and he's learned a lot of interesting things in his time with these people. But it's interesting, and this article does bring up some of the the problem is when you have somebody like Dr. Sue Savage Rumbaugh, who's been with Konsi pretty much since he showed up on this study, and has been with his son since birth, and is emotionally invested in like a pet, but also like a colleague, if you will, truly believes in the work that she's doing.
Oh, I guarantee you she thinks that chimp is another person.
Oh, exactly. And how how easy a leap that is to make with something that's as intelligent and as anthropomorphic,
However, the scary thing you got to think about, if that's the case, then was it responsible then for them to allow him to breed? If he's a colleague and a buddy and a scientist and a friend, and he's a non-human person, was it really responsible to breed them like rats just to have another one come along that you don't have to import?
Well, unless they could have fixed them up, did a little snip, but they are bonobos and they do breed and fuck like rabbits. I'm sorry, like that's kind of a thing for them.
Right. Well, I get it, but I mean, you get my point. The responsibility of the scientific study to breed them wasn't there. To complete the study was necessary, but to then breed another one into the study just simply so that they didn't have to import another one in with all those problems was kind of taking advantage of your colleague per se.
Yeah, well, you'll note that in studies like they're also in this article referenced like Coco the gorilla. They never introduced a male gorilla into that scenario, that's the unfortunate part about that Coco thing is she kind of let us gorillas live in a social culture, and to have Coco kind of not have any of her ape culture was unfortunate.
Very sad. Oh yeah, very sad.
The thing that they have with Konsi and is that they do have. They're not trying to teach all of the bonobos. Some of them are just some of them are sanctuary cases, and just to have a social aspect of on their their non-human ape side versus just always the human side.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that the fates of those guys get to be a little bit brighter. Moving on.
Yeah. Here we go.
Here we go. IFL Science, like we all do. April 16th. Chimps using spears to hunt. Oh my God! Is it time for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, dude? Talk to me. What's going on here? I don't think this is anything new. I really don't think this is anything new. I just think that we finally have the capabilities of capturing these types of things on video.
Oh well, yeah. So it's like, hey, I got a new car. Well, new to me, So hey, we've discovered this new behavior that they've probably been doing for 1,000 years in this location, right? But no, the interesting thing about this, and some people are saying, well, it's just the same behavior as using the termite stick and breaking off a stick, putting it in. The difference in this scenario is that you spot the tree crook with the bush baby in it because they're hunting other primates. That's
right.
The first difference. They actually have to snap that branch off. The difference is not just cleaning the branches off; they are actually honing a tip.
Yes, they are making it sharp.
They are making it sharp because they know that they have to puncture to kill and maim this other this other primate so that it won't hurt them.
Did they learn it from watching other humans?
So here's the interesting thing. We spend so much time in the Congo and in in Tanzania, like the Jane Goodalls and whatnot, studying these forest apes. These are savanna chimpanzees. They're living on the outskirts of the forested areas. They're in the grassland with broken trees, where it's a mostly open lifestyle. There's not as much fruit and not as much vegetation, so they eat more protein than any other studied chimp that we've seen so far. And this behavior is specific to this group. And it totally resembles, like it's analogous, if you think about that parallel evolution thing, like, well, when we moved out there, we had to do this too because there wasn't as much fruit anymore.
Happened to us. Yeah, this is exactly how we ended up where we are.
And so people are like, oh, does that mean that the chimpanzees are going to start, creating computers? And they're like, no. That just means that they're going to get better at making sticks and stabbing things for about the next 3,000 years. And then maybe they'll have a breakthrough that
maybe their feet will change, because that's always seemed to be the thing. The feet change first because they have to, they're more accustomed to walking more than waddling. The way a chimp's foot is now, they have to waddle with their hands above their head when they walk. It's just an odd friggin' movement. But once that toe starts to move up the foot a little bit, that becomes less awkward, which allows the hips to turn and yada 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 yada.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of and their hips are probably so evolved in it, like our hips never looked like their hips through our entire previous evolution. Their hips have evolved to be what they are separately from us, and they'll never get to that bipedal.
Maybe they'll get a double hinged knee or something. That would be neat.
Yeah, something sweet. I think what they're going to get from this is, the bush baby.
Right. They're going to get meat.
But the really cool thing is that environmental stress caused them to lean on tools, and those tools mimic probably what some of the first tools will never have fossil evidence of a stick, because the stick turns into soil.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is, though, consider this with the chimps and the bonobos and the billy apes. They're all direct cousins and offshoots of the chimpanzee directly. If we're looking at that, this again could just give them another cousin, because the situation is so specifically living on the outskirts of the savannah like we did. All of a sudden now there's a genetic spider web of something, and you'll find that just like glitter balls from last week, you'll have something specific in these chimps that'll make them different than every other chimp, so they'll become another subspecies.
Yeah, well, so you have to think about this too. Like, if you're used to the behavior of living in this only partially wooded area, like the grassland / woodland, but not in the deep forest, when, like we always say on the show, when the females leave at sexual maturity, they're going to continue. They're not going to just like jump into the forest, because that's not going to work. So they're going to breed with these other. They're going to find another group that's on the edge like that, and that's what's going. Like, that's how those. You can have, like, right next to each other, you can have speciation. It doesn't even have to. It just means that the skill set that chimp has learned when they move on to go start breeding is this biome. And the biome right next door, I mean, you could probably throw sticks at each other, but they're not ever going to probably move into the other locations, because it would be uncomfortable. And you can actually, it's like putting up a sexual wall, I guess, if you will. So that it's a really interesting thing to see.
It's like a third grade dance.
Yeah,
boys on one side, girls on the other.
Yeah. No. So it'll be interesting to this is not something that you can glimpse in your lifetime. But now that we kind of have this interesting study going on, and maybe they'll look a little bit deeper and see what other differences there are. And who knows, maybe they will just say, this is a distinct species. The more we look at them and document their appearance and this and that and the other, and we found a corpse and it's different than it could be interesting that in our lifetime they could
another new chimp.
The bonobo was just supposed to be a small chimp until they realized, no, this is genetically distinctly different. And the cross river gorilla was just supposed to be another lowland gorilla until, no, this is a genetically different group. And then you get into the nitty gritty on how to classify speciation.
Oh Lord, we don't want to go there.
Yeah, we should probably go to the next story.
Exactly. Moving on. Hey, dude, this was pretty cool. Wild chimps are looking both ways before crossing the street. They're listening to their mama. That's pretty cool in the long and the short of it, though. Where did they learn to do that? Well, they learned from watching other chimps getting run over by cars, pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, so, you look at this, and here's another example. Like, these are probably the deep forested chimps, and they don't look terribly comfortable here.
No.
They do have the stereo binocular vision. The reason that a horse or a cow doesn't look both ways before it's crossing the street, because it can see both ways. It's right. They got the eyes on the side of the head, so it can see predators coming from both ways. If you have a rotating neck and forward-facing eyes, and you're uncomfortable in your environment, you're probably going to look down both of those open corridors to make sure that there's nothing big and scary there, because sometimes I'm sure they go through there and there is something big and scary there. So
yeah, I just thought it was slick that it's one of those things that that's something your mama teaches you right away. Well, they're teaching the chimps that right away too.
Yeah, well, and chimps,
be smarter than a monkey, please.
Yeah, monkey see, monkey do.
That's right. Not my circus, not my monkey. Hey, Hickory House of Horrors put up an awesome review of, again, Valley of the Sasquatch. That's right, guys. I mean, I know it sounds like we're pimping this and we're getting paid for it, but we're not. Doug Hudson's our buddy, and he's doing he did the FX on this. Him and his kids did an amazing job on this, and people are just friggin' digging it. They don't want to spoil too much about the story for you, so read on at your own risk. But the Hickey's House of Horrors.blogspot.co.uk is where you can find that review. And the next thing I found, dude, the Homo Erectus footprints hint of ancient hunting parties. Did you get, dude, this was 1.5 million year old tracks give a snapshot into, well, us.
I mean, that's just unbelievable. I mean, to think that you have a perfectly preserved 1.5 million year old track is like too much for my mind to even comprehend at some point, but that's, I mean, it's amazing. It's perfect. Anybody would be happy for that track in the mud. If you're looking for Bigfoot, it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, but this is tracking the stone. That's the nice part about this. That's never going away.
Yeah.
You can pour 1 billion casts out of this and it won't ever, NFGs. I mean, it just won't care. But what they did find was the hint of a group of males traveling together. And the only reason you would do that per se would be hunting and gathering. I mean, otherwise you'd be hanging out at the cave, making the women, cook you some food.
Yeah, well, and 1.5 million years old in Kenya, like this is in that perfect golden, fully upright, possibly like exhaustion hunting, like probably using at least crude stone tools, maybe some sharpened sticks that didn't fossilize sharpened with their teeth, like that. Where we think that the sweat glands really developed and other things like that, and we probably lost our hair and yada yada yada. This is like that golden time where this is the first thing that you would look at and be like, man, that's just a weird looking human.
That's society too. That's where society kind of starts at that point. Whether it be wandering groups of nomads into actually working together for a function. That's where they say it starts at that point too.
Yep. And we all know that, primates are gregarious or whatnot, but the actual, the act of being social and having to work in social groups came from, I mean, imagine this Homo erectus is probably like 5 feet tall if it was anything. I mean, like, like that's like the upper range of what this Homo erectus probably could have been. It's about 5 feet tall.
Right.
And they're trying to take down big game on the African savannah by exhausting it and then killing it with rocks.
Right.
Like, you need help.
They're chasing woolly mammoths to death.
Yeah.
And then stabbing it with spears.
Yeah, spears are debatable at this age.
That's true too.
This would be like a broken rock, But no, like you're literally waiting for the beast's heart to explode because you can run longer than it can. And that's just looking at the dynamics in this footprint, and you can kind of see like it wasn't a slip, that's a
plant.
Yeah, planting, cutting to a different direction. This dude was running like no heel strike, all toes, just boom, boom, boom. It's a dynamic track, and it's really fascinating and amazing to see here.
Well, that is on nature.com. You can go out there and search for it if you want to. It's a pretty slick article. Back to IFL Science. David and I were talking about this right before the show, dude. Russian man's going to be the first subject of the first human head transplant ever performed. Now, I know this doesn't have anything to do with Sasquatch, but I got to tell you, people, I'm not signed up for this one. I'm not signed up to have my head put on anything. But if they can put a human head, if they can do a head transplant, why can't they put it on a monkey? I mean, could you imagine having the head of a human on a Sasquatch body? No. There you go, man.
Now we're talking. I'm just thinking.
First, we got to find the brain dead Sasquatch.
Like literally, this is a one of those like what could go wrong kind of scenarios. Oh no, the quote from the recipient could potentially experience a fate worse than death.
Yeah, right. Could you imagine being trapped in somebody else's body? I think it was talking to was Christopher York. He's like, yeah, what if the guy gets his head transferred over and all of a sudden he becomes a rapist?
Yeah. What if? What if your head gets like transplanted and you're in recovery and the body rejects it?
Yeah, game over. Where's your body? Nowhere.
I mean, this is probably the most. I don't even.
We can transplant it, but we can't put it back.
I'm just calling now. I don't think this is a real thing, and I don't think it's actually happening. And if it is, it's one of those things where like the guy just wants to experience this because he's got some sort of weird sick need. And
I think it's like the guy who sold him.
I think it's a big medical hoax, and I think it's like one of those things where they're going to be like, ha ha ha, got you all. Now go vaccinate your children.
Nanny boo boo. Yeah, polio's back. You'll get your children vaccinated. Polio never left people. You know that time you caught polio? Oh no, that's because your mama had you vaccinated. Polio hasn't gone anywhere. It's still here. You can still catch it, but not if you're vaccinated, morons. Anyhow, dude, so I get this message, and a bunch of people did. The Squatch master quits after a heart attack. I mean, dude, he was like, I had a picture of him in a hospital gown with the oxygen nose on. And this is right in the wake of losing Mitch Waite, the Mongolian monster chaser. Passed away on us this week. And all of a sudden the Squatch master was to make fun of it or what, I'm not sure. But it seems the video has been removed, maybe possibly because it was in bad taste. I don't know. We'll see for the fourth or fifth time whether the Squatch master actually retired or not. If it wasn't bad taste, sir, no good to you. If you are really sick, well, then get better. We'll find out one way or another. Lastly tonight, New York judge finally grants legal rights to 2 research chimps. Talk to me about this, David. Now, we've been on this for weeks, months. We wanted to see this happen. What's going on?
Yeah. So how many times have we brought up the Non-Human Rights Project when we're talking about, ape intelligence and cognition and all of this stuff? Well, and we even covered, it was not too long ago. It was, maybe it was back in December to January, somewhere over the new year, where Stephen Wise and the Non-Human Rights Project filed a writ of habeas corpus on behalf of a different chimp, Tommy the chimp, I believe, who is a person's personal pet, and the writ was denied. So he's been doing this for years and years and years, and finally, he went and met with the Supreme Court, state of New York, and they granted the writ of habeas corpus. Now that does not. So what's happening is, New York judges grants legal rights to 2 research chimps is not a correct title. I don't care where this came from, NPR, shame on you. And it's made to infuriate and have people question and start a debate. So what actually happened, and of course the Non-Human Rights Project is stating that they're identifying their rights as a legal person, which a legal person is different than like a person like you and I. We'll get into that in a second. But all they did is accepted the writ of habeas corpus, which is that is an inalienable human right given to all of us by during the Geneva Convention, by the United Nations, is habeas corpus. So they're filing for a writ of habeas corpus. Having it accepted doesn't give, habeas corpus can actually apply to anything. Like, we get it because there's a document that the United Nations has sanctioned that is like the 20 inalienable human rights or whatnot. It's called the Human Rights Doctrine, and so them saying yes doesn't give anybody human rights. It doesn't give these chimpanzees human rights. It just simply says, yes, we'll go through this process and we will review it. So now they go to trial and they'll hear arguments from both sides.
Boo!
Yeah. So it doesn't mean that the chimps are freed, and it doesn't mean that they're going to sanctuary or whatnot. But what this does mean is that the Non-Human Rights Project is one step closer to giving a legal personhood to chimpanzee. Now, the difference between a legal personhood and like a legal standing of a human, they're not going to have to pay taxes. They're not going to, it basically means that somebody can sue on their behalf, like filing a writ of habeas corpus, right? So while the judge is recognizing the problem where it was kind of dismissed before, let's look into this. There's a good chance that it's not going to pass muster because it is a stretch and it's hard for the legal system to do this. However, legal personhood typically only applies to, a legal personhood applies to a corporation or a business as a way of shielding, its financial officers and presidential staff from suit. So it's basically a shield from people. You could sue the company they are a legal person, and you can sue them and they can sue you, but the actual people that work for the company don't have any standing in that, right? So that's what a legal personhood is versus personhood, which we have legal rights based on the Constitution. We're not giving constitutional rights to chimpanzees. We're not giving human rights to chimpanzees. We're trying to give a legal personhood, which gives them a very small amount of the rights, the same rights that a corporation or business has in the court of law. So it's an interesting process, and I'm going to be right on this. You better believe it. When they finally have a court date, I'm going to be checking my phone every 30 minutes to see if it was a yay or nay, because that could be huge, and it opens up a Pandora's box of,
oh god,
now what do we do?
Hundreds of billions of dollars will be spent. It's gonna be a cluster F from here to
So what the fear is, even from the Non-Human Rights Project, is that this, granting non-human rights to any or like granting legal personhood to any non-human entity that's not a business, because apparently that's okay.
You would basically have to set up police forces to protect the non-human primates.
No, because they don't have, like, you don't have to set up a police force to protect corporations.
When they're being poached and being killed in the forest, corporations aren't being poached and killed in the forest.
Right to life and liberty is a human right. Now, the chimpanzee, we can sue on behalf, like we can file a writ of habeas corpus. That's because that's what they're doing. That's about as far as you can go. Now, there's no human rights violations because they're not human.
No, I understand that, but once we get to a certain point, that's what, if they get approved for non-human primate rights, okay, the whole point of that is so that they can't be kept in captivity, that they're a sentient being and their emotions are crushed, and it's a horrible thing to do to these things by putting them in prison, no different than enslaving a human.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting question for sure, and I want to find out what the United States Supreme Court justices are really going to think about this. But the whole like research chimp thing is falling to the wayside, and that more and more they're going towards. They're finding sanctuary after sanctuary for the research chimps of the United States, and they're really ceasing and desisting all studies going forward. They're not starting any new ones, and they're trying to figure out what to do with the chimpanzees that they have now. Once you get outside of that, it's like, okay, well, are we going to start suing for on behalf of elephants in zoos? And,
right.
We start suing SeaWorld for the dolphins.
Chauncey the donkey's going to have an attorney getting released from the Oakland prison zoo over there.
So but the thing that's the most interesting to me, though, is that, that puts scientists on the stand to decide, because that's the beautiful thing about doing it in a court of law versus, in public opinion, is that they have to make a case for and a case against, and the justices are going to have to figure out what the right thing is. Now, for a chimpanzee, it's going to be harder to make that decision to give the legal personhood to a chimpanzee, and it's going to be really easy to say no dice to the donkey when you present that in the court of law. So that's going to be an interesting one to kind of find. It'll set precedent for or against. If they say no, well, they're going to have to come up with a whole new different tactic if they really want to see this through. And they've been doing it for so long that I don't see them stopping at any point.
Nor I. And this looks like a really good place to take a break and get our tip of the week. And now it's time for Rules to Squatch By with your old pal Wes.
Number 35. There are many dangerous creatures you can encounter while out there squatching or just going about your day-to-day life. So be alert, folks. Keep your eyes open and watch out for those swamp donkeys. Ugh. Come check out my recent work and my art for sale at weslosner.com. Stay squatchy, my friends.
God bless you, Wes. I love you, brother. Let's hear what the Slips promos got this week. I'm sure it's...
This is what you've missed this week on the 40 and Slip.
Yeah, the cast-defining Bigfoot would find a broom closet squatching. That comment isn't just for them. It's indicative to the whole genre, and not just Bigfoot. Anyone who is listening to a meowing cat in the background.
I know.
Check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/The Fortean Slip or at theforteanslip.blogspot.com.
Bless that boy. Oh, the 40 slip. I try not to miss it. I really do. I've been really busy this week, but boy, gotta love it.
I'm so bad about pimping stuff. Like I barely, mentioned our podcast on the show, but I recently did another rabbit hole episode with Chris. I haven't checked to see if it's up yet or not. So that's going to be another good time.
Yeah, it actually went up this afternoon down the rabbit hole with David. It was actually pretty slick. Don't forget to go to squatchcoffee.com and get you some Sasquatch coffee. Because you know what? The June trip's coming up, and I'm going to have some Sasquatch coffee there. So, and then I invited Gunner. He's going to check his dates. He might actually come out and squatch with us. That would actually be pretty slick.
That would be good times. Good times.
Absolutely. So, guess what time it is, people?
And now for tonight's topic.
That's right, the Mapinguari. So, what the heck is a Mapinguari? I don't really know. It's one of those things that we wanted to look at and decide and figure out for ourselves. It's basically an upright giant sloth. Help me out here, David. We're talking about the Amazon. Is that where we're at here?
We're down in Brazil, South America, and so this is something that I'm really interested in because they always talk about it being South America's Bigfoot, the Mapinguari, and it's described as an upright walking hairy beast, and it's the description is one eye.
Described as a tall black furred hominid has been allegedly seen in the jungles along Rio Arjaguara. It's described as a Sasquatch-like creature, but only having one eye, giant claw-like hands, and some reports of a second mouth near the stomach.
That spews terrible scent and will knock you unconscious. And amazing stuff out of this Mapinguari. But there are lots of sightings, historical sightings and contemporary sightings, and people who swear up and down that this is like, just like the Bigfoot, this is a living, breathing thing. But the descriptions don't sound to me like a Bigfoot. So
in March or April of 1937, one of these creatures supposedly went into a 3-week rampage at the Barra da Garza. I can't pronounce any of these names. A small farming town 300 miles southwest of the city of Cobaya, capital of the central state of Mato Grosso do Sul. A large number of heads of cattle were slaughtered by somebody or something with superhuman strength, enough to torn out their huge tongues. Reports include unconfirmed sightings, humanoid-like tracks along as long as 18 inches, and horrible roaring in the woods. Altogether, over 100 heads of yellow cattle of old Spanish origin were killed, all of the way to Point Branca, located 150 miles south of that other place I was talking about. This Mapinguari rampage made the major newspapers in Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo.
So interesting, we have this sort of, livestock culling kind of a thing, it sounds a lot like Bigfoot, but then other reports from South America describe Mapinguari as a large, foul-smelling nocturnal animal. Haha, that sounds familiar. Covered in red hair, okay, with a frightful screaming cry. All right, we got this. This other version of the legendary creature is supposedly a strict vegetarian with feet that are turned around backwards and claws capable of ripping apart palm trees.
Yeah, that's the one. Well, that's the other one that's down there. I don't think this. See, the Mapinguari is. I think the Mapinguari is a term much like in Nepal of Yeti. I think Mapinguari is what the F is that? More so the description of a specific type of animal. And I think that's what we're going on here is descriptions of different encounters of animals that they've had in those areas. And they're just kind of wrapping them all up into like Yeti, like Mapinguari. What the F is that?
Yeah. So the interesting thing, though, is that where you have to look is there's two possibilities. One is that, this one-eyed, stinky monster with a mouth in its gut is either a really bad
acid trip.
well, it could be that too. No, but like a really bad translation of a really old story that could either, it could be Bigfoot, it could be something else, it could be something that it doesn't make sense. The interesting thing that there's a lot of similarities with the Bigfoot story and the stories around this particular creature, so it leads me to believe that it's it could be just that the story has gotten kind of out of sorts, like broken telephone. You whisper over to your neighbor over the course of like 10,000 years or something, and it comes out with one eye and a mouth in its belly,
Well,
and feet that are turned backwards.
now show us the territory that we're talking about here.
Well, yeah,
The Amazon is a big place.
so the Amazon is not
It's all that green.
it's not exactly where we're looking. Actually, I was like, oh great, maybe I'll do like so this is like 1,300 miles and like, well, let's just put this down here and see if we can oh no, wait, we're leaving the Earth. We've left the Earth's atmosphere. This is a huge area, but this is not where we're talking about actually. Where we're talking about is more southerly, down in this agricultural area. It is, abutting and near some mountains and some forested area. Sao Paulo down here. This is just a trip. I have some family that lives down here. This big blob right here is the city. This is probably one of the most populous cities ever.
Holy jeez.
It's so we're not talking
Think
small
about
town.
overcrowding here. Holy crap.
Yeah, this is so no small town folk over here. But if I zoom back out and go back up here, this is where they're saying that the this cattle thing was happening up here. Now, mind you, this is like 350 miles off of Sao Paulo now, so this is just a very big country, and people kind of underestimate that. But we're looking at some habitat that I'm like, it's not really mountainous. There's a whole lot of green, but there's a lot of agriculture. But there's still a whole lot of green. There's a lot of rivers. I wonder what else could live there. So, of course, I have to go on the other theory, not the Bigfoot Mapinguari theory, but there's and people have tried to take this into North America too. Like, well, maybe Bigfoot is just a large ground sloth. Something that actually existed, something that we know was a real thing. This is a sloth that's the size of a rhinoceros, huge, 12 feet tall, crazy. Like because of the construct of its leg bones and tail, probably used them to stand erect. And that was here's an example, something that's related to sloths, also related to anteaters and other things like that. A crazy huge, crazy big, probably really stinky creature that would have instilled fear in the hearts of folks. They even say that it possibly was a red creature. Interesting thing about the story of the feet turned backwards, like anteaters, they walk on the sides of their feet with these long, gigantic claws that are good for ripping apart trees. Just like in the story, that actually to walk on them have to be pointing in reverse. So the tracks it leaves looks like its feet are on backwards.
Aha! The plot thickens.
The plot thickens. So its toes literally go towards the back of it as it walks away. And this is a really great explanation for the Mapinguari. This is a terrible explanation for Sasquatch, even though people once people bring this up and they're like, oh well, if it's down there, it's no. This was not something that we really had a lot of up here. We did have giant ground sloths up here, but this particular one is specific to down there, and this is the one that we're looking at, and this is a gigantic beast. I mean, can you imagine like the 4-ton animal. Like we're not
I
talking
wonder
about
what it tastes
Sasquatch, an 800-pound Sasquatch.
Yeah, I wonder what it
this
tastes like. Do you think
yeah,
it'd be good over the fire?
It probably was pretty good because it disappeared about the same time the first human inhabitants showed up in South America.
Oh, yeah, I bet you it did because there's a lot of meat there.
The plot thickens, and it's probably, but here, although it was primarily a quadruped, its trackways show that it was capable of bipedal locomotion. A biomechanical analysis also suggests that it had adaptations for bipedalism.
But how would that explain modern day experiences with it?
Well, so they say that this particular genus was extinct about 10,000 years ago, give or take. There are some argued specimen 8,000 years ago. The Amazon is a pretty big place, so that one would either say that this is a vestigial story passed down from peoples who had to deal with this thing.
Yeah, I was going to say 10,000 years is a long time for an oral tradition to still have people talking about sightings today.
Well, so 10,000 years or 0.010 million years ago, surviving into, surviving after the peak. I mean, this is sub-equatorial.
I mean, we're talking about pre-flood, pre-biblical flood here, brother.
Yeah, it didn't make the ark,
right?
Or did it? No. So here's the interesting thing though is that this is here in endemic to Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Paraguay, Uruguay, basically all of South America, and so to have these stories still there, I mean. Yeah, stories and oral traditions and very important stories can last a long time, but 10,000 years, literally from the first inhabitants from South America, that's a pretty big stretch to imagine that this story, there was no biological basis for something like this. So this is one of those cryptids that I'm going to say, if the stories are still pumping out for the last 200 years, this is a good cryptid to look for too, but it's not going to be a Bigfoot.
Not gonna be a Bigfoot. I'm kind of with you. I found this one. I thought this was pretty slick. This was, the giant ground sloth looking creature, and of course it didn't do it right for me, so I'll try it a different way. No, I know, and there, the format changes. They don't tell you, it's like they don't want you to use the service. They just want you to use the service. It's just like, hey, whatever. It's we get it. It's okay. It's free. You don't care. Yeah, this was my idea of what people might be seeing as some kind of a relic leftover of a giant sloth-like descendant.
The fact that they describe it as having one eye could be misidentification. It could be something that's it could be symbolism in a cultural story and a cultural tale.
It could be just a misidentification of the nose. Big, large noses out in front of these creatures could look like a giant eyeball to, especially the people who aren't aware that those things are still out there.
The stinky mouth, in the belly area, it could be something that was misconstrued. Maybe it's just got it was a bipedal creature, but it was also quadrupedal, so maybe it had to have excess skin to be able to stretch out fully to stand up, and maybe there was some like kind of bilateral skin hanging that looked like a mouth. What is that? How did that story stand through time? Also, how did it get translated to get into my non-Portuguese speaking eyes? But also, so here's the problem. They were speaking their local dialects, and then they were speaking Portuguese, and now they're translating that back into English, and most people do that like Spanish, and that's not the correct thing to do with Portuguese. I know people who speak Portuguese, it's not the correct thing to do.
He's no bueno. He's no bueno at all. Well, there you have it, folks. I mean, that's basically the idea of the Mapinguari. Now, who knows? Is it a giant sloth still relic living in there? Is it some kind of a Bigfoot creature? The Amazon's a really big place. It's probably several different things, and there's probably several different stories being mixed between tribes to come out to be some kind of monster in the woods, but one never knows. So be careful when you're walking around in the Amazon jungle. Thinking, David?
I'm thinking the one thing that it probably is not is a primate. I would love it if they held a a large bipedal primate in the Amazon. But it's looking for this story with the description. Yes, we all want it to be Bigfoot. It's kind of like the cognitive pareidolia, where we hear of something large and hairy that stands up on 2 feet, and we want it to be Bigfoot every single time. Well, this one probably is referring to that giant ground sloth. Sorry, it's not the Brazilian Bigfoot. It's the Mapinguari.
The Mapinguari. That's right. This is probably going to be the last time we actually bring this up because we're getting really full on slots. June 11th to the 14th, we're going squatching with Justin Smeha of the Sierra Evidence Initiative is going to be our guide along Gold Lake, California to do some early season squatching. Now, what we're seeing here in California right now is the drought is continuing, which means the water is going to be drying up early this year, which means this is probably going to be our best opportunity when the food is good and the water is good this year. So June 11th to the 14th, send me an email at sloungepodcast@gmail.com to get your information updates. We're going up for a scouting mission the second week of May, and we will let you know a whole lot more after that. You're going to get to go squatching with our old pal Wes, and Dr. David Batdorf, pseudo-scientist, is going to be right there by my side because we're bringing the Jeep and all our squatching supplies.
We're going to be hanging in the hammock.
Hanging in the hammock. If you guys have any questions about that stuff, please come up to our camp while we're up there because we will be glad to show you anything about it because we love our hammock setups.
Yep. Also, like Jeff says, this is probably the last time we're going to be bringing this up. So if you've been interested, an email just is not a commitment. Why don't you find out why don't you find out what's going on first? There's no reservations. There's no money. This $20 does not get paid to us.
No. I don't want none of your cash.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the maximum amount that will be incurred, and it does not go to us. But we're looking to have a good time. We're looking for people who really want to go out there. Like I want to go and
find out what it's about, what it takes to go out and go squatching.
And I want to go into some in deep and start looking at some stuff. It's gonna be good.
Gonna get balls deep in Gold Lake. Actually, I think it's pretty cold up there this time of year, so you don't really want to get that quite involved with it. But for sure, it's gonna be a whole lot of fun. We're gonna have horseshoes and camps. We'll have lawn darts and camps. We'll have a scavenger hunt going on for different types of forest ideas. There's gonna be a lot of squatching going on. But a lot of squatching puts you in a lot of downtime too, because it'll all get explained at camp, but it's going to be a lot of fun no matter what time of day it is, including nap time, because I really enjoy nap time.
Yeah, well, and if you're like me, I like to split kind of the research into two distinct times, like the dawn and dusk hours. So I definitely need a little nappy time in the middle, if you know what I'm saying.
A little nappy keeps me up long into the evening. Well, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us this week. I got to tell you, I enjoyed this one. The Mapinguari is probably the giant sloth. All the news of the week. Come and join us again next Wednesday, 7, 8 o'clock. We're not sure. Deal with it. It's a podcast. For myself, the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and my co-host, the Dr. David Batdorf, pseudoscientist. We'll see you next week, and may the Squatch be with you. Boom, boom.
It's a one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. Seriously, though, if that just came running out of you in the woods.
Oh, dude, I am so out, man. No doubt. I'm gone. Peace.